Where did it all come from? I mean, it's pretty much the biggest question you can ask, right? In this explainer, we're going to walk through a theological source that lays out a complete framework for creation, from the very beginning to the very end. Okay, so here's our roadmap. First, we'll get into the grand design of creation itself. Then, we're going to explore the invisible world of angels, see how that realm got divided and introduce evil into the picture. And finally, we'll talk about the creation of, well, everything else, the physical universe. And that's really the core question, isn't it? How do you account for, well, everything? This source attempts to give us a comprehensive map of all existence. It traces a line from every single thing, seen and unseen, good and evil, all the way back to one single starting point, a divine act of creation. So let's jump right into part one, the grand design. The first thing we have to do is get our heads around what creation actually means in this context, because, it's a little more complex than just a simple beginning. So get this, creation here is actually a two-part deal. First, you have the act of making something out of nothing, what we usually think of as creation. But there's a second part that's just as important, the act of perfecting what's imperfect. So it's a process of both starting something and completing it. And what's really fascinating here is that, according to the text, this wasn't a solo act. It was more like a divine joint effort, with each member of the Trinity playing a very specific and very crucial role. Think of it like a construction project, but on a cosmic scale. You've got the Father, who is the architect, the one who dreams up the entire blueprint. Then there's the Son, who is like the master builder, actually putting everything together based on that plan. And finally, you have the Holy Spirit, who is the power that brings it all to life, perfecting it and making it complete. So why do all this? What's the point? Well, the text is super clear about this. The number one reason for all of existence is to reflect the glory of its creator. It's meant to be a mirror of God's nature. And the source adds, there's a secondary purpose. For us, humanity, to find happiness in this world and give praise back in return. Okay, so let's move on to the first thing that was actually created. And it might not be what you think. Before there were any stars or planets, this source describes the creation of an invisible spiritual world, a world inhabited by angels. So, what exactly are angels according to this text? Well, it breaks them down into 5 key traits. First off, they're pure spirit, no flesh and bone. They are personal beings with an intellect, emotions, and will that are described as superior to ours. They were created with a specific moral, holy purpose. They're also incredibly powerful, stronger than us, but not all powerful. And last but not least, they're immortal. They don't die. And don't picture just a big cloud of angels floating around randomly. No. Not at all. The source describes a highly organized society with different jobs and ranks. You've got Michael, basically the commanding general in spiritual battles. You have Gabriel, the top-tier messenger. There are the cherubim who guard God's holiness, and the seraphim who help lead worship. It's a whole celestial order. But, as you can probably guess, this perfect, orderly spiritual world, it didn't last. And this is where the story takes a dark turn. This is the source's explanation for how conflict, rebellion, and evil first entered the picture. So what went wrong? According to the text, it all came down to one thing: pride. A very powerful angel, along with a whole group of followers, is said to have rejected their purpose. They decided they didn't want to serve anymore. They wanted to be equal with their creator. And that led to a full-blown rebellion. And the leader of this rebellion? He gets a new title, Satan, which literally means the adversary. The source gives him a bunch of other names too, and each one kind of describes a different part of his new job description, you could say. Names like devil, deceiver, and even ruler of this world. Now, this is a really, really important point in this framework. Evil isn't some brand new thing that was created. Instead, it's presented as a corruption of something that was originally good. So that incredible intellect that angels have, it gets twisted and used for deception. That powerful will, it turns from serving to rebelling. A holy purpose becomes totally immoral. It's a twisting of the good. All right, so we've covered the spiritual realm and the great conflict within it. Now let's move on to the final piece of this puzzle, the creation of the tangible material world. The universe we can actually see and touch. But before we dive into the nuts and bolts, the source makes something crystal clear. It basically says, hey, don't read this like a science textbook. That's not the point. The purpose here is theological. It's a story centered on humanity, a relationship with God, and the whole plan of salvation. Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, the 6 days of creation. This is a huge one, right? And the theological text we're looking at, it knows it's a big topic. It actually lays out several different ways that people have interpreted these days over the centuries, often trying to square the text with modern science. So there are a few main camps. You've got the day-age theory, which says each day was actually a super long period, like a geological age. Then there's the reconstruction theory, which argues for a massive time gap in the story. There's even a hybrid view. And of course, there's the literal day theory, which says each day was a normal 24-hour day. The source does point out that this last one, the literal view, tends to line up most consistently with other related scriptures. And really, this all brings us to the big takeaway, because in the end, it doesn't matter if your origin story comes from a theological text like this one, from cosmology and the Big Bang, or from evolutionary biology. The story we tell ourselves about where we came from completely, fundamentally shapes how we search for meaning and purpose in our lives right now. What we believe about our beginning will always influence where we think we're going.